back to season 3 of Titans of Food Service. I'm your host, Nick Portillo, and I'm continuing my Journey Across America in 50 Weeks tour, where I'm highlighting one Titan of Food Service from every state. This week, I'm heading to the land of 10,000 lakes, Minnesota. And to do so, I'm thrilled to welcome David Benowitz. He's the president of Craft and Crew Hospitality. On the episode, we talk about his experience in the business, how he got into the business. He also works with his dad and the dynamics of a father-son relationship, a professional relationship, and a personal relationship, and trying to maintain the two. It's a really fun, interesting, and conversation. I even mentioned to David that he's very introspective, and I like the way that he thinks about things, and you'll get to see that a little bit in the episode. But a little background on David: he leads this impressive lineup of restaurants under the Craft and Crew umbrella, some of which include Duke's on 7th, The Block, Stanley's Northeast Barroom, Pub 819, The How, Daily Kitchen and Bar, Al's Place, and the Bar Draft House. He has a clear commitment to building a corporate culture that values employee growth and guest satisfaction. He also ensures that Craft and Crew's core values, which are guest satisfaction, crew development, teamwork, creativity, fun, and growth, are at the center of every decision that they make within the business. It's this dedication that has helped them create unforgettable dining experiences across the entire state of Minnesota. In the conversation, we also talk about his use of EOS, the entrepreneurial operating system, and how he has a visionary and implementer. And you're probably wondering what am I talking about, or maybe you are familiar with it, but we get more into that in the discussion. Before I dive into my conversation with David, I want to explore a little bit about what makes Minnesota's food service scene so unique. So it's known for its love of comfort food and locally sourced ingredients. The state's culinary identity is deeply tied to its Scandinavian and German roots. The state is famous for iconic dishes like tater tot hot dish, wild rice soup, and the legendary Juicy Lucy burger, a Minneapolis invention featuring a cheese stuffed patty. Minnesota also boasts a thriving craft beer scene with over 200 breweries statewide, and its food service industry generates billions annually, supporting thousands of restaurants and jobs, making it a cornerstone of the local economy. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome David. All right, David, welcome to the Titans of Food Service, man. I appreciate you taking time to come on and meet with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to be a part of this and looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah. So how's the new year going for you, for your business?
Overall, pretty well. We had one major setback that was out of our control, which we talked about previously,
Yeah.
with a fire that we had at one of our stores. But besides that, things are going fairly well. As expected, we have a little bit of a downturn in January and February. I think a lot of restaurants do. But to combat that, we pushed out a pretty large gift card sale and also have a pretty aggressive promotion for the month of January on some food items.
Yeah.
That has been perceived pretty well so far in terms of the value play.
Yeah.
So, we like to constantly innovate and try new things. So usually this is the time of the year where we'll push a lot of new items out, and hopefully one or two sticks that we can continue every January and February.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Why this time of the year? Why do you push it here at the beginning of a year?
Well, look, I mean, I think customers after the holidays are looking to save where they can and have a lot of expenses from the month of December. So at least with our business and where we're located, we've always seen a little bit of a downturn in January and February, just because in Minnesota, not only is it cold, but also, as I just previously stated, it tends to be a time of the year where people are looking to find a deal and spend a little bit less. So we try to be pretty aggressive during these months to sustain revenue.
That makes sense. I was talking to a gentleman just yesterday, actually, from Minnesota, and he was saying that it was -5 where he was in the state yesterday. I was like, holy. Where I'm at right now, I'm literally looking out the window. It's sunny. It's probably about 65, 70 degrees out.
Sounds nice.
It's pretty nice. I've only
Yeah,
been to Minnesota once. Beautiful place, but I went in the fall when it wasn't too cold. All the trees were, turning that
yeah,
brown, orangish color. Beautiful place, and I think I went in the
yeah.
right
I mean,
year.
look, Minnesota is an awesome place not only to raise a family, but in the spring, the summer, there's nothing better. But in the winter, it can be pretty brutal,
Yeah,
especially if you're not accustomed to the weather, snow and ice. However, the last couple of winters, in terms of snow accumulation, it's been fantastic because there has been very minimal amount. So right now we have maybe a half inch, which for this time of the year, uh, we typically have
yeah.
20 to 30 inches on the ground. So
Wow, much different
yeah,
climate than where I'm at.
yes, yes.
So tell me, go back to the beginning. How did you get into the food business?
Yeah, so my story is probably a little bit different than most. I actually was always interested in the hotel space growing up. I was fascinated by everything in Las Vegas. My parents took me to Las Vegas, I think, when I was 16 or 17 years old, prior to me being legally able to gamble. That doesn't mean didn't try to try. So, um, and something that most people don't know about me, in junior high and high school, I when my job was to perform magic, and I did it for private events, birthday parties. I did a couple local restaurants like Friday and Saturday nights. So, and Las Vegas is also known for their acts, and one of that is magic. So I remember going there as a kid and just being fascinated by that aspect of it, and then by the sheer volume of people going in and out of the hotels and the restaurants. So I always, had an inkling that I would go into hospitality in some capacity. I just didn't know how I would get there. My father was in the bar business, not in the food business, growing up, and I saw a lot of issues with him being in that business. He didn't have a lot of support. It was really him running the show, and he wore every single hat. Didn't have really any structure in place. And in 2004, I'm 21 years ago. Like he purchased a property in a building that had a kitchen, and he had zero food experience, as I just mentioned. I was working for corporate America at the time, doing inside sales, and I think 2 or 3 months into the opening, he called me and said, "David, if there's ever a time that you'd be interested to come help me out, I could really utilize your help." And I said, why don't I try working along your side and inside the restaurant on the weekends? I'll continue doing my corporate job. So I did that for about 3 months. Um, and I really saw a path. I didn't know how I would get there, but I knew I could create something great alongside my father. Um, so about 3 months later, I ended up, putting my notice in, where I'm working with him full time, and we worked closely together for about the first decade, in the same office, in the basement, in our South Minneapolis store, which we still have. Um, and then, in 2009, I, I feel every day I feel lucky because I was able to find a person, um, actually via Craigslist, which is remarkable. And that you think about it now, because you can't really find anyone on Craigslist. But I put out a post for an unpaid marketing intern. I swear that's what the post said. We ended up paying him with food and gas money for the first 6 months, and that was it. I don't think that would fly anymore. Uh, and I just saw his name was Luke, and I just saw something in him that I hadn't seen in anyone else, that I had met thus far in the business. And he started running all of our marketing for us. Um, when I went to school, social media really wasn't a thing. So I was trying to align our businesses with, Facebook at the time, email marketing. I was doing all that for my own personal email and sending them out. If you remember those days, and he took that on, and then eventually uh, went on to run all of our operations, and we hired someone else to do marketing for us as an intern. That's sort of been our model, is internship into full-time position um, within the organization. It's been a great model for us. We can talk about that more if you want. But
Yeah.
and now in 2019 we bought the Block Food and Drink together, and now he's a business partner with myself and my father, who my father no longer runs the day to day. So Luke and I oversee all of our stores. We also have ownership in 4 of our 8 concepts.
That's insane that
Mm-hmm.
you found someone for an unpaid position on Craigslist.
Correct. You, you
You
never
know,
know what can happen. Yeah.
I feel like when you hear Craigslist, like it's always kind of a crapshoot of what you're gonna get from there.
Yeah.
I have not personally been on Craigslist in, I mean, probably a decade, and
Same. Yeah. Same.
even back in the day when I would go on it, it's like, whether you want, I used to do like bartering with people. So I'd trade things, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
find
Mm-hmm.
people on there with stuff they're trying to sell or get rid of.
Yep.
And every
Yep.
time I deal with someone on there, it's like, this is interesting. Or,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
even when I do a deal, like in broad daylight, I'm trading a golf club for a wallet, it was kind of a fun thing that I was doing. Um, you're like, is this person, sane and a good person? I don't know. I'll
Correct.
find out.
Correct.
But that is
Correct.
really cool that you found, what would be an eventual business partner of yours through Craigslist. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so now, so Luke's job mainly is operations. Is he, or what else does he do?
Yeah, so he's co-owner. So I don't know if you're familiar, Nick, with the traction model,
Yeah, yeah, no, very
EOS
well.
traction. Okay, so
Yep,
so we're on that model. We've been on it for the last 8 years. Um, in terms of the visionary integrator,
yep.
um, for a while he was our integrator.
Okay.
Now we're in the process of promoting someone else to that position. So we're sort of both taking on the visionary role, but we tend to go back and forth as well. So um, we both have ideas on how we want where the company to go to in terms of the vision, but in terms of our operations, he had the title for probably 7 years of director of operations, and again now that role is going to be going to somebody else. But yeah, I'm grateful every day that I found them, because I know how challenging it is, just by talking with a lot of my colleagues in the industry locally, having that right hand person by your side to help, not only to talk to, but to go through all the issues that we go through in our industry every day with being in the people business. There's it needs constant attention. So
Yeah.
it's lonely at the top, and to have someone along your side is truly beneficial. And I tell everyone, find a good integrator if they're on the EOS model, because it's truly a game changer. We wouldn't be even close to the level we're at without him in place.
And for those listening, kind of the EOS model with the visionary and the implementer, because my dad and I, we use elements of EOS ourselves, where
Mm-hmm.
he's kind of the visionary, kind of the idea person, and then he has me. I'm also kind of a visionary and an implementer. I do a little bit of both, but essentially, if he or him and I would create the idea, then I am in charge of putting the idea into action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then underneath that, folds out into your rocks, which are like quarterly goals or
That's
goals. We do
exactly right.
level 10
Yep.
meetings, which we do
Yep.
every week within our different divisions, departments within our company, to make sure that we're achieving the overall vision and what we set out to do for the year. So we do use elements of that, and it's really been nice, just keeping the business on track. I think for me personally, I'm not necessarily like a good manager of people, but I can understand like putting a process into place and then finding and how, essentially having people help me put those things into action and manage the process and manage the people to be able to
Yeah,
accomplish what we need to do.
yeah. Yeah, I'll say, Nick, if you are looking to grow and if you don't have the right structure, I'm not saying EOS is for everyone. There I know there's other operating systems, but I just would advise having something in place to have that structure because people crave structure. And when we first started it, we did have some comments like, we're becoming too corporate. But there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason why, these large restaurants are who they are because they have a process and a structure, and it's followed every time. And consistency is key, right? And customers need consistency, and you're not going to be able to accomplish that without the right systems and protocol in place. I've seen it work so many times well this way, and when usually when people fail, they don't have it. It's either people, process, or product. People's number one, but if you don't have the right process for the people, it can fail pretty quickly because people are going to really look for an organization that they feel confident in, and if they feel confident, they're going to be happy coming to work,
Yeah.
and so that's what it's all about.
Yeah, you're totally right. In our experience as well, giving that, as you kind of mentioned, giving the structure to the business, I like to tell our team like, hey, we want to do big company stuff, but protect
Mm-hmm.
and perfect what we do as as a smaller business, medium business as we grow. Because if we look at like the things that like a ConAgra does, or some of these large just food businesses, for example, there's super systematized, super structure. We're not necessarily going to maybe get to that point, but we can work towards those types of things and protect
Mm-hmm.
our culture, make it a great place for people to work. And EOS are you a member of EO?
I'm not a member of EO. No, maybe I
That's
should
all
be.
right.
Yeah,
Have you ever heard of EO before?
I have. I
Yeah,
have.
that's how I found out about EOS. I've been in EO now for about 5 years, and it's been great. You join you get into a forum with like anywhere between 5 to 8 people and talk about different parts of your business. You really get to discover a lot of your blind spots because they put you in a group with entrepreneurs that are within other industries that are not your own, and so it's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to hear how other people run their business. And so EOS, very familiar with that. I've heard of MAP, and there's other, systems out there that people use that seem to be pretty beneficial for their
Yeah,
business.
yeah. I was involved with Vistage. I don't know if you've heard of Vistage
Yeah, I
for
know. Yeah, I know. Vistage.
about a year and a half, and it was great. I just had some issues with my forum and the people
Yeah,
inside that, which is why I dropped out. Um, so I'm familiar with the process of the forum, but it's really beneficial, especially if you have the right people in place. That group think model, and a lot of the Visage members are on EOS traction, so it's nice to have the same language, and in terms of your communication with them as well.
You ever heard of the adage? I'm sure you have. If you're on social media, you've heard this, that you are like the sum of your 5 closest
Oh
friends.
yeah, so
Yeah,
true.
it
Yeah,
is, and
yeah,
I've got so many friends who growing up, they're just total yahoos. They're just
yeah,
fun to hang out with,
yeah.
but I was like, I don't want to ditch those guys. I enjoy hanging out with those guys, but there's also guys that you can meet at EO or professionally that in there you can build a network of other people that are entrepreneurs going through a similar type experience. It doesn't have to be a group like that, but that's been my way
Mm-hmm.
of finding, building out my network of people that are going through similar type issues and problems and experiences that I'm going through at the same time.
Yeah, and the networking piece is so crucial. I can't tell you how many avenues have opened
Yeah.
because of where I've not only placed myself, but also have the opportunity to give of myself as well. Something that I think we talked about previously is
Yeah.
an organization that I started in 2017 called Twin Cities Restaurant Leadership.
Yeah.
So prior to being in Vistage, I was in another program it was called economic gardening locally here. It was by the Small Business Association, where it was like a roundtable format of different industries that came together and talked about real time issues. And I always thought to myself, why isn't there something like this just for restaurants? Like
Mm,
there maybe nationally there was, but here in the Twin Cities there wasn't at that time. So I'm like, what the hell? I'm just going to start myself.
yeah.
So I started with 3 other restaurants that I was pretty close with. Uh, and now we have, I think, 40 restaurants involved with it. I don't advertise it now, just sort of a word of mouth. We meet monthly at a different restaurant every month. And we process issues just like you do in Vistage or EO, because we're all going through
Mhm.
similar types of issues. And if if you haven't gone through that issue, maybe someone else that has to help. So we provide insight perspective and resources to each other, not only in that meeting but outside that meeting. And then usually quarterly we'll bring in an outside speaker to talk about an educational item to help us with our business professionally and sometimes even personally as well.
That's really smart. I on this podcast, I've had people that have owned restaurants and restaurant chains, um, and every time I talk to somebody within that field, like I always pick up like a little nugget or different tactic that these different
Mm-hmm,
restaurateurs do,
mm-hmm,
um, and it's like, man, that should be shared across other restaurants. Like this is a
mm-hmm,
great idea,
mm-hmm.
and good for you for starting that. I think that's really really cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, it's been fun. And it's been, probably the number one reason why I've been able to network the way I have within the Twin Cities because of that. And I don't charge for it. It's just my time. But I tell you, the benefit that I received because it's a free service, there isn't, money um, that just, there's so much value.
Speaking of mentors or working with people within your
Yeah.
business, what's it been
Mhm.
like working with your dad over the years?
Yeah, I would be lying if I was saying that it's easy. It hasn't been. I think all family businesses have their challenge. Typically, the more family members that are in the business, there's more challenges because of the personality. But my dad and I really had, from the beginning, um, a truly different perspective on how to manage the business and the people inside of it from day one. And for the first couple of years, I sort of went along with it because I didn't know any better. But as I, tested what I thought at the core was right, things started changing for
Mm,
the better. Um, and it took him a while to understand and see that. But when I finally, you know, spoke up um, and self advocated, because there was no one else besides me, and there was, I have an older brother, but he's not in the business. He started seeing a different way of handling the business and thinking differently. But still, even from today, he's not involved in the day to day. No, he's on our board, more of an advisor role. Um, he's in town more in the summer than the winter time. So that my parents travel in the winter more, which they should at their age. Um, it still is challenging, just because uh, he this is really his legacy and his life. Um, he maybe it's a generational thing, but he hasn't really uh, built a lot outside of his business. Like this is how he identifies himself.
mm,
And for me, I identify myself in a lot of other aspects of my life, in terms of my hobbies and my family and my networking groups. Obviously, the business is important, but we also look at life very differently. So we've had a
mhm,
lot of those discussions. Um, the biggest thing for me right now in 2025 is looking at the big picture. Like there's the family component and there's the business component.
mhm,
And what is most important, right? What is most important? Like I've been at this for 21 years. My dad has been in the business since 1976. He'll be 75 this year. We have a really good structure in place. The business is pretty solid in terms of the people we have now, and again, just the organizational structure component. If he wasn't involved, things would continue on this path with the people we have. And to clearly articulate that to him, I think is important. So that's a lot of the conversations we've been having recently. Is let's really try to solidify the family piece and the father-son piece first, and the business second, because for the past 21 years, it's been all, 90% of the relationship in the business has been on the business, and, family and personal ties into it, but only if the business comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, at this point in our lives and our careers, I don't agree with it, because nothing is guaranteed, right? Nothing is guaranteed. And I would hate to look back, if something were to happen, and regret not having these hard conversations. And nobody likes to have hard conversations, right? And again, there aren't any other family members to advocate, so I have to self-advocate. So it's taken me a long time to come to this realization and really be upfront and vulnerable, but I think it's really important. Another reason why I started writing this family business book that I'm writing. It's a family business blueprint. And, there's a lot of family business books out there. I think mine is going to be different because of the conversations not only I've had with my father, and I go into pretty great detail on how I started those and the outcomes of those conversations. But I interviewed about 25 other business owners of first, second, third, fourth generations, and their experience versus what I've experienced over the 21 years. And I wanted to put this book out, and I'm going to be putting this book out because I want to help other small family businesses succeed, because I wish I had the knowledge and understanding I have today 20 years ago, because I would have done things a lot differently, and I would have saved a lot more time, saved a lot more money and energy, just mental space and capacity, and then sleep. I mean, it's been challenging, and there's been times over the past 20 years where I thought about quitting. I'm not going to lie, because it's been so hard. But at the end of the day, I had to continue on, for my family and for the legacy of the brand. I knew we could build something much bigger than what it was, and we had so many people that relied on us, not only our staff but also their families. So when I looked at that, I was like, I knew if I were to give up, things would fall along, and that was not okay with me. So we're in a better position today than we were, 4 years ago. I'll say, 4 years ago, it was in a pretty bad and dark spot. Mm-hmm. And that's when I started to think, like, how can I take this and really help other people? Because I know there's other people in the same position that are struggling, and because it's family, these conversations are hard, mm-hmm. and I just want to help. So this book I've been working on for about the last year and a half. It's taken as much time as it has, just because of the business, right? Like, we had a fire in one of our kitchens this summer, and then we opened another business. So, and so I'm currently working on it. It's all written, but now it's being edited, and hopefully Q1, at the end of Q1, it will be coming out. So you can look for it, but it's the title, at least right now, is just a family business blueprint, and it'll be online on Amazon very soon.
I like that. I could definitely empathize being in a family business, working with my dad
Hmm.
as well.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's a weird, there's a power dynamic, right? For me and for you, our dads have been in this doing this, type of work for a very long time. And they have the experience, and then we come in as this the son
Correct.
already in this
Correct.
in a different power in the power dynamic where he is the elder. We've always looked up to him as a dad, and now we're in a professional. I like what you said too. Like the first couple of years is like you kind of just went along with it, and then you start to learn, and then you start to apply, the things that you've
Correct.
learned in your life, in your education,
Correct. Correct.
into the business. And is it accepted? Just because it was done one way 20 years ago may not be how we want to do it today. And are they open to change and things like that? I was actually talking with a buddy of mine this last week, and he's in a business where it's him and another gentleman, and my buddy's 31, and the guy's in his 60s, and it's multiple generations older, and how that person views business and the use of technology. And they're constantly in this battle of, no, we in order to get new customers, and retain the ones we have to look at the business a lot different. They're a financial advising firm. They have to look at the business a lot differently, than how it's always been. So it's very unique in that way. And I also resonate too with what you're saying with between the boundaries of work and family. My dad, I think in many ways does view his job as his identity, where I'm kind of like
Hmm.
yourself, where I have my job and my
Yep.
friends and my
Yep.
family, and
Hmm.
there's like more to life. I think maybe it's a generational thing, or maybe it's a personal thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it probably is. It probably is. And it's interesting just to touch on the point, Nick. I can remember in 2015 having a conversation with my dad, being really upfront with him and saying, look, you know, if we want to get to this level of where we're at today and having, 8 locations at that time, I think we had 3 locations. Um, doing business the way we're doing it right now is not going to get us there, and we
Mhm.
need to think differently. We need to think outside the box. We need to bring in other resources, to help us get there. And shortly thereafter, I was introduced to the traction EOS model, by a colleague in a different industry. uh, and I brought in a professional implementer to, um, you know, implement this for
Mhm.
our company. And she had to have several meetings with my dad, about the process, because you know this idea of not only investing, in a concept like this over the course of several years, but bringing in, an outside professional to lead our leadership team at that time, was foreign to my dad. And after the first meeting, he's like, I don't think this is going to work. I don't see a reason to invest tens of thousands of dollars into this. What we're doing right now is just fine. So the conversations that had to happen and just to put that structure into place, um, was was immense. And it was, for both on myself and with Luke talking to him about it. Fortunately, we were able to convince him. But uh, and that I'm so glad we did it, because that was really the turning point of our business. It really was. If I think back, of like, what is one, you know now I say to my kids, like, everyone, I believe, there's 4 or 5 decisions, professionally and personally, that someone makes throughout their lives that can greatly change the trajectory of their life, right?
Mhm.
And what are those 4 or 5 decisions going to be for you? Like, think, and it could be positive, or it could be a negative thing, right? And it can
Yeah.
happen really quickly. You never know when it's going to happen. For our business, I would say that is one of the 4 or 5 decisions that we made that completely changed the trajectory of our business. Personally, I can identify those two in my head. And we were actually just on winter break with our family, and we had this conversation at the dinner table, one night right before New Year's Eve. We all talked about them, up until this point in our lives, like, what do we believe it is? But I truly believe that at any moment it can change based upon a decision that you make. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting to think about that. But that's implementing EOS into our business was definitely one of ours, and the organization still feels it 10 years later. It really does.
I like how you put that too. Like you kind of having 4 to 5 big decisions in your professional life. I look back on the history of my business, which has been around for 10 years now. And there has been, a couple big things that really, I mean, you have years of, you have years of growth and years of loss as well. But it's really been
Mm-hmm.
a couple, a few decisions that have really been, instrumental on how we made it to 10 years and how we got to where we're at now that we're in 10 years. I like how you said that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
What do you hope to achieve with your dad?
I really hope we can get to a place where he's looking at the bigger picture of what this is all about, versus, my dad is, and maybe this is a generational thing. My dad is a very numbers driven, financial minded person. So majority of our conversations revolve around that because that's what he knows and that's what he looks at. Um, we just had a conversation last week about this. That Dad, I said, Dad, if you think about the last 10 years, how many times have you come to me or even come to Luke and said, um, what can we do to create more value for our guests? What can we do to provide more benefits or maybe different benefits for our staff, to maybe make them think differently about the organization, or maybe to attract different types of talent? And that you've never had those conversations with us, and that's okay because we have it handled. But just think about it. Like everything we talk about is financially related to the businesses that you own 100%, because that's just how his mind always operates.
Mhm.
And that ties, as I talked about earlier, that ties directly into our personal relationship too, because it is constantly coming up. Um, so I hope we can get to a place where um, he thinks of family first and he sees me um, as his son first versus his business partner first. Because right now, and I'll tell him this too, I feel that he sees me as his partner and then his son.
Mm.
And especially at this point in his life, he's going to be 75. Um, I don't think that's okay, and I'm not comfortable with it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
Um, I think that answers your question.
Yeah.
Where he sees me differently versus how he's seen me over the past 20 years, because nothing is guaranteed. And we just really need to think about the big picture and where we're at, and what's truly important.
Yeah.
Um,
If you can go back in time, over 20 years ago when you started, would you have chosen to do this?
I would, I'm a true believer that everything really happens for a reason, and I think my dad asked me and pushed me to come help him versus my brother, because he knew, consciously or unconsciously, that um, I was going to have the ability to take us to the level that we're at today.
Mhm.
And I just, maybe not that I'm better or smarter than my brother, but I probably think a little bit differently when it comes to business and to marketing and to people. There's also the family component where um, my wife is truly understanding of the situation that I'm in, and she allows me to have the flexibility that is needed, especially earlier on in my career,
Mhm.
when we are opening a lot of stores. um, and having small kids. Where and my sister-in-law, not that she isn't flexible and is a wonderful person, but she doesn't necessarily have that same mindset. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I truly feel that I was put in this position for a reason, and now I'm trying, not only to build this legacy for my family, um, but our brand in the Twin Cities is fairly well known in our space and our niche um, of our restaurant in terms of the, I would say, the elevated American cuisine space,
Hmm.
um, and that means a lot. Like I want to continue it and have it grow, um, and I want to be there for not only our staff but their families. And if one of my kids or my brother's kids has the skill set and brings something of value to the table and truly has a passion for the industry, I want this to be there for them as well.
Yeah.
Um, so it's yeah. So I would say yes. I even though it has been by far and away the most challenging piece of my life, it's also been the most rewarding because I've been able to not only gain so much perspective, but it's challenged me in a way that I never thought I could be challenged, and it's you know brought me out of my comfort zone so many times that uh, I've had to be uncomfortable and reach out for help in ways I never thought that I would or could. But then in turn, that's brought opportunities to me that I never thought that I would have.
Wow.
Um, so you know, I never, 20 years, I mean, before I started in this business, um, just growing up, I was a very introverted child, and had a really challenging time. I can even remember like growing up, like ordering food at a restaurant. I had the hardest time communicating with a server. And I remember my parents talking to me about it, and it took me like years and years and years just to order myself because I was so shy, and just a true introvert. So thinking about what I do now and the opportunities I have and the speaking engagements that I've done within the industry, um, that never would have happened
Hmm.
if I didn't go along this path. So I'm, truly grateful for, the opportunity that I've been given, but also, grateful for the people in my life and the people in our organization that have helped shape what Craft and Crew hospitality is today.
Incredible. You're such an
Thanks.
introspective person,
Yeah.
despite all of the challenges, you mentioned that it's been rewarding and that you
Mhm.
would do this again. And, with the future of, your own kids and, your nephews and nieces and, potentially if they ever want to get in the business, I'm sure maybe you do things
Correct.
differently than
Yeah.
how it was given to you,
Yeah.
or how
Yeah.
it worked with you. But I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I've always said with regard to any family member, we're not going to just have a position for them. Like they have to prove themselves, right? They have to bring value to the organization and have, not only the passion but the skill set. Um, Otherwise it's not going to work
Hmm.
because there has been that has happened with a family member where we did not allow them to come in because we didn't feel that they were bringing value. They just wanted it.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that you're going to come into the business just because you like it or want it. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Well, David, I want to say thank you so much. I mean,
yeah,
truly,
yeah,
for being vulnerable today, sharing your story. Just thank you so much. It means a
absolutely.
lot that you came on and did that. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks
Next
for
time,
having me.
yeah, next time I'm out there, man, I'll have to come by and check out the different concepts that you have.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Sounds good,
Appreciate
man.
it.